I've really been thinking a lot about the importance of how we write about, for example, like violence, like in fiction and how violence is represented. Um, I think mostly like just for the same reasons because it's about trying to bring a perspective of like looking at humans like with nuance because every human is complex, right? Like every human is complex and it's really, really easy, especially just for the news media and stuff, to like shortcut all of that. And people, I think especially with social media, love to project like their own shadow onto fucking everything, like even if they're just like I don't know. It's like the things that they reject in themselves are what they like project and accuse like onto other people in a lot of ways. And so yeah, for me, I'm just like, yeah, I just am thinking about that a lot is like, what is the purpose of this? And like, how can we explore it in a way that really does help open up that sense of like, I don't know, like how we can help people see that there's nuance in people, that the complexity is like, we're not saying it's good or bad, we're just saying like it exists. Like, can we just look at it this way, you know?
I think what's interesting now is, I mean, before it was like there was the package and the packaging, and that was always bullshit because they were definitely interested in the package. And now with social media, we have to be, curate this kind of self. And it's funny because um it's it's both empowering, but also we can get trapped by it. The mixture of like you have a very curated image,
Hmm.
and I do too. And um it's it's fun, but it also feels like um well, how does it feel for you? I mean,
Yeah. It's like, I know, I think for a while, like for a couple of years, it was more fun than frustrating in a way, right? Like I was like, I can control what I look like down to like being able to like edit like my skin or whatever, right? Like I grew up with like really severe cystic acne, and so what I loved about the internet because I had such dysphoria about my body is I could like be an identity like a person without the struggle of having a body, right? Like I could kind of project that ideal without like I could live in this space and like be this thing that people interacted with without having to think about like any of like the corporeal like the material reality like of my existence. Um but now how I feel lately is because it's so overwhelming and like there's so much information and like there's so much noise and so much out there that I feel a little bit like like lately I feel like a little bit exhausted by it, and I also feel like it's dampening like um my kind of my creative ability. Does that make sense? Like I feel like I have a shorter attention span, and I feel like I'm absorbing too much information. Like I just really feel like I'm not able to be as like much of a deep worker or a deep thinker, right? As like I feel like I used to be.
I wanted to ask you about you're the editor of Witchcraft magazine.
Hmm.
Um it's interesting to me because historically, like witchcraft evolved because there were no social avenues for women to access power in their lives. Um, do you think there's an increased interest in witchcraft and the supernatural as a way for women to gain control over their lives? In reality and in fiction, I mean, especially here, that that the idea that women are bleeding out, um, and can't access basic fucking healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I do think that. And I especially think with like I think with the proliferation of like spiritual TikTok, there's like this whole new realm of like new age thinking that I think kind of preys on that desire as well for control. Like I think that there really is something to like witchcraft and like meditation and like ritual and process and like routine, like all those kinds of things I think are actually really naturally like emergent in the human mind. Like I think ritual is a like deeply necessary and like normal practice for like all humans to have. I think we are like drawn to it naturally. And I think it becomes present in like all kinds of different ways. Um but like I do think there's like a huge proliferation of stuff that almost gets like too far out there, like almost little like someone is a guru and like kind of telling you like what to do with your life or saying things like um like that they'll do like angel readings or like those kinds of things like on TikTok for money. I do think that's happening a lot. I think there's also many other kinds of avenues in which women like seek to gain more control too. And I think one of those avenues is like tweakments and plastic surgery and like that kind of thing too, which this is not a judgment against it. Like I have my tits done and I've done like I do Botox all the time. And that's why it's like I kind of see that. I'm like, this is a method for me to like gain a sense of control in a way. And it's like even if it maybe doesn't fix a problem, like an internal feeling, it still kind of like makes me feel like I'm sometimes back in the driver's seat in a weird way, Like I think there's all kinds of ways that we end up doing that. Yeah, 'cause it's like a direct action that you feel like you can take. Just like any practice of like witchcraft or ritual like is kind of the same thing. Um and I do wonder too like I can only speculate. Like I think maybe there's like is there a correlation between a lot of these kinds of things and like this sense of like women almost like losing like more of their rights, like access to reproductive rights or like right access to like healthcare or like even mental health support, or, like those kinds of things.
Do you ever feel like in writing sex scenes or things like that, do you ever feel, I mean, for me, writing under a different voice, an avatar, a pseudonym, and writing about sex was very freeing. And then I just finished my book one of my memoir, and it was just writing about sex and having it as me was just, it was fucking, it was a whole other ball game. I mean, it's not fiction. How do you handle people conflating? Because a lot of times people do not understand what fiction means,
Mm.
and they make assumptions about you and what you're writing about and the freedom of your brain to be able to go anywhere. Um, and your sexuality and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, I think especially like really early on when I wrote animals eat each other, there was I like they had like a lot of interview questions and stuff that were about like is this true, like is this true or not.
What
And like at the time, I would say even now probably I feel like my answer would always just be like, well, like when I'm writing, it's like even if something has a seed that's in me. Like I'm not like why put that person on the page? That's right. Like that's an avatar. You know what I mean? Like that's like not me. Even if something maybe feels like me, you know what I mean? And it made it like for me, it made it just so much easier to write without being concerned what like anyone would think about it. Like it allowed me to like let go of this idea of like I've had people ask me before, like, oh, how do you write about this? Like, if your parents will read it and like all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I've never thought about that. And I think that's because like fiction was like the only place in my life that I just truly felt like free. Like I wasn't being controlled. I wasn't being told what to think or how to feel or that I was right or wrong in any way. And it became such a bastion of freedom for me that I think any weirdness that people had where they may be associated with me. Like I had one review even early on that was like, "Oh, I wonder like if one day, like a nice and she'll come forward and say this is like a diary or like something like that." And like I was just a little bit like, okay, like whatever. But then I also was just kind of like, I just kind of put this wall in front of me about it because I think if I became too concerned with what they were thinking, I think I fear it would like influence like what I'm writing about or that sense of freedom, right? That I have. And I think like throughout my whole like fiction writing like life, that's been like the one thing that I've almost like protected at all costs of that sense of like this is where I feel free. Like, and I'm going to like do this no matter like what anyone in my life says or whatever they try to like influence for me.